The text came at 4:47 p.m. on Christmas Eve. I was elbowed deep in pie dough. 35 years of Ashford Christmases. And my son ended them with 11 words and a period. Hey, Mom, change of plans. Me and Megan decided to keep it small this year. Just us and the kids. Jared's coming over. It's a small family thing. Mom, see you in January. Love you. I read it standing at my kitchen counter with flour on my hands and cinnamon in the air. The Christmas binder was open beside me, every tab complete. Every checkbox filled. 35 years of menus and gift lists and seating charts stacked in my handwriting. 22 wrapped gifts sat in the living room. The cabin key hung on its red ribbon by the front door where it had hung every December for 28 years. A small family thing. I am his family. I am his mother. I am the woman who carried him for 9 months and held Christmas together for 35 years after that. I read the text again. I counted the people he listed. Him, Megan, their 2 kids, Jared. 5 Ashfords at Christmas. I am also an Ashford. I was in Ashford before any of them existed. I wiped the flour from my hands. I closed the binder. I picked up the phone and called Gerald, my accountant who's managed my finances for 20 years. Gerald. I said I need to cancel some things. It was 5:02 p.m. I had the rest of the evening. Let me tell you about the binder. I started it the year Brandon turned 5. Frank's mother had just passed. Heart failure, quiet and quick. And somebody had to hold Christmas together. I raised my hand. I never put it down. The binder is leather. Dark burgundy brass clasp. My initial stamped on the bottom right corner. Frank gave it to me that first year as a joke. Your command center general. I didn't laugh. I filled it. Every year gets a tab. Inside each tab, a menu planned 3 weeks out. A grocery list organized by store aisle. A gift inventory for every family member with sizes and preferences updated annually. A seating chart for the cabin, a schedule of activities for the kids, a budget breakdown. I track what people liked. I note who has allergies. I remember who argued at dinner and keep them at separate ends of the table the next year. This year's tab was thick. 22 people, 3 days of meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, drinks. The catering order alone. Prime rib roasted vegetables, 3 desserts, bread rolls, coffee service ran $4,800 through Rose's kitchen. The gifts $12,000 for 22 people, each one chosen individually. Brandon's watch, Megan's cashmere scarf, tablets for the grandkids, Jared's espresso machine. The cabin rental $6,500 for the week. Booked the previous January through a premium flexible policy because the good cabins go fast. The binder doesn't track the hours. If it did, the number would embarrass both of us. Nobody asked to see the binder. Nobody asked how much it cost. Nobody asked if I needed help. They just showed up every December 25th and said, Mom, you outdid yourself. Then they ate opened presents and went home. Outdid myself, yes. Every single year. Frank and I built Christmas together for 20 years before I started doing it alone. He was a general contractor. Big hands, bigger laugh, the kind of man who could frame a house and slow dance in the same afternoon. He couldn't cook. The man burned water. But he could carry a 40-pound turkey from the truck to the cabin kitchen in a snowstorm while singing Jingle Bells off-key. And that counted for something. We rented the evergreen cabin the year Brandon turned 12. 3 bedrooms, a stone fireplace, a wraparound deck overlooking Aspen Ridge. Frank strung the lights. I organized the meals. He chopped firewood. I wrapped the gifts. He played Santa for the kids, stuffing a pillow under a red coat I'd sewn myself. I stayed up until 2:00 a.m. assembling the toys he couldn't figure out. We were a team. I was the architect. He was the foreman. The Ashford Christmas became a thing. Frank's brother Hank started coming. Then the cousins' kids, then the family friends who didn't have anywhere else to go. By year 10, we were hosting 18 people. By year 20, it was 22. 3-day event activities for the kids, a cocktail hour. Frank insisted on my grandmother's recipe for butter cookies that I baked 100 dozen of every year. People called it magical. They said it felt like a movie. They told their friends. They posted photos. Frank knew the truth. He knew I started planning in September. He knew I spent Saturdays in November comparison shopping. He knew I stayed up past midnight wrapping gifts while he snored in the recliner. He knew. And every year, he left me a handwritten note inside the binder. The notes changed over the years, short and sweet at first. You're amazing, T. Then longer. I watched you today, and I don't know how you do it. The last one he ever wrote, January 2021, tucked into the upcoming December tab, said, "You're the reason they all come home." He was gone before that Christmas arrived. Frank died on December 19th, 2021. Cardiac arrest in the driveway. He was carrying groceries. My grocery list, my Christmas shopping, and his heart just stopped. The paramedics said it was fast. The doctor said he didn't suffer. I appreciated them saying that, even though neither of them was there to know. We buried Frank on December 22nd. Gray sky, frozen ground, a service at St. Mark's that filled every pew. Brandon stood on my left. Jared stood on my right. Hank sat behind me and put his hand on my shoulder and kept it there for the entire hour. 3 days later, I hosted Christmas. 23 people came. I cooked through the first day with tears running into the stuffing. I wrapped gifts with hands that wouldn't stay still. I kept the cabin reservation because Frank had already paid for it, and wasting his money felt like losing another piece of him. I set the table for 24 and left Frank's chair empty. I put his plate out. I poured his glass. Nobody told me to. Nobody stopped me. They came, they ate, they opened gifts, they hugged me once, sometimes twice. They said how brave I was. They said Frank would have wanted this. They said, "Teresa, this is beautiful." Then they left. They drove home to their families and their lives and their warm beds, and I stood in the cabin kitchen at midnight, washing 23 sets of dishes by hand because the dishwasher was broken, and I hadn't had time to call a repairman because I'd been planning Christmas while burying my husband. One person asked if I was okay. One person offered to help with the dishes. One person stayed past midnight. That was Hank. He dried every plate. He didn't say a word. He just dried. After Frank died, things changed. Not all at once. Slow, gradual, like the tide pulling sand from under your feet. You don't feel it moving until you look down and you're standing on nothing. Year 1. Megan suggested we simplify Christmas. Fewer dishes, she said. Fewer activities. Give yourself a break, Teresa. She smiled when she said it. I cut 2 dishes from the menu and added a rest day at the cabin. Nobody else volunteered to pick up the slack. Year 2. Brandon started making decisions without asking me. He moved Christmas dinner from the cabin to his house, then moved it back when Megan's oven broke 2 days before. He didn't apologize for the chaos. He didn't mention that I'd had to rebook the cabin on 72 hours' notice. He said, "Glad we figured it out. He said we year 3. I wasn't copied on the family email about Thanksgiving plans Megan hosted. She called it giving Teresa a break. It was a nice dinner. The napkins matched the tablecloth. The food was catered. Nobody mentioned that for 29 years, I'd roasted a 20-pound turkey and made 7 side dishes from scratch. When I brought my sweet potato casserole anyway, Megan said, "Oh, we already have one." Year 4, I noticed I wasn't in the family group text. I asked Brandon about it. He said, "Oh, that's just for logistics stuff. Nothing important." I nodded. I didn't push. I told myself they were trying to help. I told myself they meant well. I should have seen the pattern, year 1. She rearranged the seating chart. Year 2, he moved the venue. Year 3, I lost Thanksgiving. Year 4, I lost the group text. Each year, I lost 1 more seat at my own table. I kept cooking. Anyway, let me be fair about Megan. She is not evil. She is not a monster. She is a woman who grew up with a mother who was both of those things. And she carries that damage like a compass pointing north, always everywhere, even when it's wrong. Megan's mother, Donna, showed up at their wedding uninvited and rearranged the centerpieces. Donna called every Sunday to criticize. Donna gave gifts with strings attached to down payment on a condo, but only in her preferred neighborhood. Donna held money over Megan's head the way some people hold a match over a bridge. I understand why Megan guards her territory. I understand the flinch. I watched her meet me for the first time and see Donna staring back. The problem is, I am not Donna. Megan is an event planner professionally. She coordinates corporate galas for 300 guests. She knows the cost of catering, the complexity of logistics, the hours behind a seamless event. She knows exactly what my Christmas involved. That's what made it worse. She knew, and she never offered to help. Instead, she reframed my work. My gift-giving was guilt-tripping. My traditions were forcing her way. My organization was controlling. She told Brandon for years that my involvement was unhealthy. I heard her say it once last October. I was carrying a pie to their house, pumpkin from scratch, Brandon's favorite since childhood. I came through the side door because the front was locked, and I heard Megan's voice from the kitchen. Your mom uses Christmas to control this family. I stood in the hallway with the pie getting cold. I set it on the entry table. I let myself out. I never told Brandon what I heard. I wish she could see the difference between a woman who controls and a woman who cares. Brandon was Frank's project. Everything I am in the classroom. Patient, structured, steady. Frank was in the workshop. He taught Brandon to use a level before the boy could ride a bike. He taught him to shake hands firmly, to look people in the eye, to say what he meant and mean what he said. Then Frank died, and Brandon lost his anchor. Megan filled the vacuum slowly, the way she does everything. With planning and purpose and a smile that says she's only trying to help, Brandon started speaking differently. Corporate language going forward, best practices, streamlining. He stopped calling me mom in group settings. I became Teresa. He texted instead of called. He hedged instead of committed. He became a man who ended sentences with but and never finished the thought. I still have the Father's Day card he made at age 8. Construction paper, glitter glue, crooked letters. Mom, you're the best mom and dad sometimes. Love, Brandon. It's taped inside the binder. December 1999. Because even in June, everything found its way back to my Christmas book. My son used to climb into my lap and tell me every secret he had. He told me about his first kiss. Annie Margulis behind the gym, 7th grade. He told me when he was scared. He told me when he was proud. Now he sends texts with periods at the end. Periods are how you end a sentence. They're also how you end a conversation you don't want to have. December 23rd. My house looked like a staging facility. The living room. 22 gifts wrapped in silver and red paper, tagged in my handwriting with personal notes for each person. I'd been shopping since September. I knew Lily wanted the art set with the wooden case. I knew Brandon's watch was the one he'd admired in a catalog and thrown away. Thinking I hadn't noticed, I noticed the kitchen. Confirmation emails printed and pinned to the corkboard. Rose's Kitchen. $4,800 for Christmas dinner service. The menu was prime rib herbed roasted vegetables, twice-baked potatoes, cranberry walnut salad, 3 desserts, bread rolls, coffee and tea service for 22. I'd finalized the head count in November. The desk, the cabin confirmation, Evergreen Cabin, Aspen Ridge, December 24th to 30th, $6,500 for the week. Premium flexible cancellation policy, which I'd added 3 years ago because mountain weather is unpredictable. Check-in at 3 p.m. on the 24th. The checkbook, one transfer scheduled $25,000, routed to Brandon's mortgage company. Same as every year since Frank died. Frank's life insurance had been significant, and I'd been using a portion to help Brandon with his mortgage. 5 years running $125,000 total. Megan didn't know about the checks. Brandon never told her. The binder sat open on the kitchen counter, every checkbox filled. I texted Brandon at 10 a.m. What time should I bring everything to the cabin tomorrow? He read it at 10:03. He replied at 4:47 p.m. A small family thing. I read it 3 times. The screen didn't change. The words didn't rearrange themselves into something kinder. Just us and the kids. Jared's coming over. Jared, my other son, my younger boy. He was invited. He'd been folded into the small family thing without hesitation. I was the one subtracted. I looked at the gifts in my living room. The watch for Brandon, the scarf for Megan, the tablets, the toys, the books, the earrings, the sweaters. I looked at the catering confirmation pinned to the board. 22 servings of prime rib that would arrive tomorrow at a cabin I'd paid for to feed people who would be expecting everything I'd always provided. I looked at the cabin key on its red ribbon. The brass was worn smooth from 28 years in my hands. It's a small family thing, Mom. As if I am not family. As if I am not small enough. I set the phone on the counter. I picked up the landline. I called Gerald. If you've ever been the one who held everything together only to be told you're not needed, stay with me. Because what I did next, they never saw it coming. I sat at the kitchen table. The gifts surrounded me. 22 packages in silver and red, stacked like a department store display. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine. I'd hung fresh garland along the staircase the day before, strung with white lights that blinked on a timer Frank had programmed 6 years ago. I'd never changed the timer. It still turned on at 4 p.m., the way he'd set it. I didn't call Brandon. I didn't text back. I didn't cry, throw anything, or reach for the wine in the cabinet. I sat. Then I did what I've always done. I planned. But this time I wasn't planning Christmas. I was unplanning it. I opened my laptop. I pulled up 3 browser tabs. The cabin reservation confirmation, the catering order from Rose's Kitchen, the bank transfer scheduled for December 23rd. Gerald had set it to process overnight. I pulled the checkbook from the desk drawer. I pulled the gift receipts from the binder front pocket where I keep them organized by store. I made a list 3 columns written on the back of a grocery receipt because that's what was closest. Cancel, return, redirect cabin gifts bonus. I wrote the numbers. $6,500, $12,000, $25,000, plus the catering, $4,800. Total $48,300. That's the price of an Ashford Christmas. That's what it costs to feed 22 people for 3 days, house them in a mountain cabin, buy each of them a personally chosen gift, and subsidize your son's mortgage so his wife can call you controlling from the house you helped pay for. $48,300. And not one person in that family, not one, ever asked what it cost. I picked up the phone. I started with Gerald. Gerald picked up on the second ring. Merry Christmas, Teresa. Gerald, I need to cancel the transfer to Brandon. Silence. 2 seconds. Maybe 3. Gerald has managed my finances for 20 years. He knew the weight of what I was asking. All $25,000. Every cent redirected to the Meadowbrook Community Foundation, the general fund. I can process that tonight. Are you certain, Gerald? I've been certain about everything I've done for 35 years. Nobody noticed. Tonight they'll notice what I don't do. He didn't argue. He said he'd send confirmation by morning. I called Rosa next. Rosa Gutierrez, owner of Rose's Kitchen, my caterer for 12 years. She picked up on the first ring. She was prepping my order, my Christmas Eve order that she'd been filling faithfully since 2014. Rosa, I'm so sorry. I need to cancel tomorrow's delivery. Teresa, is everything okay? Change of plans. Rosa hesitated. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. Your daughter-in-law called last week. She wanted to know about the order. She asked if she could change the menu. I gripped the phone tighter. What did you tell her? I told her it's your account, Teresa. She'd need your authorization. Megan called Rosa. Megan tried to change my catering order. She was already managing my Christmas from behind the curtain, adjusting the production while telling Brandon to cut me from the guest list. Cancel the full order, Rosa. I'm sorry for the late notice. Don't apologize. I've been cooking for you for 12 years. You've never canned once. She paused. You take care of yourself, Teresa. I hung up. 2 calls down. The cabin was next. The gift returns would come last. I checked the time. 6:14 p.m. The night was young. I had work to do. Christmas Eve, 8 p.m. The stores were closing in an hour, but the parking lots were already empty. Everyone was home with their families, everyone except me. I loaded the gifts into my trunk, 7 bags. I'd wrapped each one individually, tissue paper, ribbon, handwritten tags. In the car. I unwrapped them one at a time and sorted them into return piles by store. The sound of tape peeling off paper filled the silence. It's a particular sound. Small, sharp, final, the sound of something being undone. I returned Brandon's watch first, stainless steel Swiss movement engraved on the back to my son with love. Mom. The clerk at the jewelry counter processed the refund without reading the inscription. She scanned. She typed. She handed me a receipt. $1,400 back on my card. Nobody reads the inscriptions. Then the department store Megan's cashmere scarf, the kids' tablets, the cousins' gifts. A young clerk with tinsel in her hair scanned item after item. Family plans change. She asked something like that. $12,000 in gifts, 22 presents chosen over 3 months of careful observation and shopping. All of it returned in 40 minutes. The last gift I held was a framed photograph. I'd had it restored and enlarged, all the Ashfords at the cabin 15 years ago. Frank was in the center, laughing, one arm around me, the other waving at the camera. I looked at Frank's face. I put the photo back in my bag. That one was mine to keep. The cabin property management office stays open late on Christmas Eve. Holiday check-ins, last-minute problems, guests locking themselves out. Dave Henderson runs the desk. He's managed the evergreen cabin for as long as I've been renting it. I walked in at 9:15 p.m. Dave looked up from his paperwork and smiled. Teresa, everything okay with the cabin check-ins at 3 tomorrow? I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the key. Brass heavy threaded through a red ribbon Frank had tied that first year. The ribbon was frayed at the edges, now faded from holly red to something closer to rose. I'd carried this key for 28 Decembers. I won't be needing it this year, Dave. I said it on the counter. Or next year. His face changed. He looked at the key, then at me, then at the key again. This cabin is the Ashford Christmas. Everyone in this town knows that. Mrs. Ashford. Are you sure? Should I hold it for you in case you change your mind? Full cancellation. The flexible policy covers it. It does, but process the refund. Dave, and have a Merry Christmas. I walked out. Behind me, I heard him call my name once more. I didn't turn around. The drive home took 12 minutes. Christmas lights blurred past the windows. Reds and greens and whites strung on porches and wrapped around mailboxes, lighting up houses full of people who were together tonight. The key was gone. The ribbon was gone. 28 years handed across a counter in 30 seconds. I felt something I hadn't expected. Not sadness relief. I came home to a house that was staged for a performance that had been canceled. The tree was up. 7 feet of Douglas fir decorated with ornaments I'd collected over 40 years. The kids' handmade ones from school. The glass balls Frank's mother had given us the silver star on top that I climbed a stepladder to place every year because Frank always said I was the only one who got it straight. The stockings were hung. I'd hung them out of habit the week before. Brandon's from when he was 12, red felt with a glitter glue reindeer. Megan's, which I'd bought to match after their wedding. The grandchildren's monogrammed last year. My own hung last because I always ran out of hooks and had to improvise. I took them down one at a time. Brandon's first, then Megan's, then the kids', then mine. I folded them and put them in the box under the stairs. The mantel looked naked without them. I sat in Frank's recliner. The leather still held the impression of his body wider in the seat worn on the left armrest where he rested his elbow. I ate leftover soup from a mug. I watched the snow fall outside the kitchen window, heavy and soft, the kind of snow that makes everything quiet. My phone buzzed at 10:30 p.m. Uncle Hank, Merry Christmas, Teresa. I'll be at your door at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Don't argue. I smiled. First time in 6 hours. Bring wine, I texted back. Already in the car, he replied. I couldn't sleep Christmas morning. 4 a.m., dark and cold. The house ticking with silence. I made coffee. I sat at the table. And my mind did what it does when the rest of me stops. It organized. It sorted. It filed. I kept thinking about Brandon's iPad last week Wednesday. I'd stopped by their house to drop off Lily's birthday party invitation list. Megan had asked me to hand address the envelopes because my handwriting was so much nicer. I had sat at their kitchen counter and addressed 30 envelopes while Megan was upstairs on a work call. Brandon's iPad was next to me. We have the same model, same case, same color. I picked it up thinking it was mine. The screen was unlocked. A group chat was open. At the time, I glanced at it for half a second. Realized it wasn't my device and set it down. I'm a retired principal. I don't snoop. I respect privacy the way I respect fire codes incompletely. But lying awake on Christmas morning, those half-conned fragments came back. The chat was called Ashford Xmas 2026, 9 members. I saw names I recognized. Brandon, Megan, Jared, cousins. I was not in it. I'd never seen it. The most recent message I'd glimpsed was from Megan. Don't tell Teresa yet. Brandon will handle it. Handle it? Like I was a problem to be managed. Like I was a vendor to be canceled. Like 35 years of building Christmas for these people had made me an inconvenience to be handled. 9 people in that group chat. 9 people who saw Megan type those words and said nothing. They plan their Christmas the way you plan a party that someone isn't invited to, because that's exactly what it was. And there, between the logistics and the menu suggestions, was a message from Jared, my younger son, my baby. 2 words. Sounds good. Should I bring wine? He didn't hesitate. He didn't question. He didn't say, what about mom? He asked about wine. I didn't spiral. I've spent 32 years managing a school building with 600 children, 43 teachers, and a leaky roof. I know how to receive bad information and keep my hands steady. I sat with what I'd remembered the way a principal reviews a disciplinary report. I read the evidence. I considered the context. I weighed the severity. 9 people planned a Christmas without me. My son was the messenger. My daughter-in-law was the architect. My younger son was a willing participant. The cousins went along because going along is what people do when someone else makes the plan. Megan wrote, "Don't tell Teresa yet." Yet. That word as if the telling was always coming just later, just softer, just after every decision had already been made. But here's the thing. I didn't cancel Christmas because of the group chat. I canceled it the night before, hours before this memory crystallized. I canceled it on instinct and heartbreak, standing in my kitchen with flour on my hands and rejection on my phone. The group chat didn't change my decision. It built a floor under it. It confirmed that my instincts were right. This wasn't one text on one night. This was months of coordinated exclusion dressed up in Megan's therapeutic language about boundaries and healthy distance. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is stop arguing with the evidence. I finished my coffee. I washed the mug. I set it on the rack to dry. For the first time in 35 years, Christmas morning belonged to me. I had nowhere to be, nothing to prepare, and no one to serve. It was terrifying. It was wonderful. Let me tell you what was happening at Brandon's house because I know the template. I built the template. Christmas morning. Megan set the table with new linen napkins. She'd ordered them from a catalog cream with gold embroidery. She put out the good china, which was actually my good china that I'd lent her for Thanksgiving 2 years ago and never got back. She arranged a centerpiece. She turned on the playlist. She made it look like a magazine. But here's what Megan didn't do. She didn't order the food. She didn't buy the gifts. She didn't book the cabin. She didn't prepare the schedule, the activities, the snacks for the kids, the breakfast spread, the afternoon cocktail hour, the midnight hot chocolate that Brandon has loved since he was 6. Megan planned a takeover. She didn't plan a Christmas. There's a difference. An event planner knows this. You can design the invitations, choose the color scheme, pick the venue. But if nobody books the caterer, there's no food. If nobody orders the equipment, there's no sound system. If nobody hires the staff, nobody's clearing the tables. Megan designed the Christmas. I was the caterer. The equipment and the staff. She fired me and forgot to replace me. At 8 a.m., Brandon texted me, "Merry Christmas, Mom. We'll catch up in January." A heart emoji. He sent 11 words of rejection on Christmas Eve and followed it with a heart emoji on Christmas morning. My son communicates his love in punctuation. Now, an emoji is not a conversation. A heart symbol is not a heart. I didn't reply. I was drinking coffee in Frank's chair, watching the snow and waiting for Hank. The family was about to discover what happens when the person who did everything does nothing. If you know a woman like me, a mother, a grandmother, someone who holds it all together while everyone else just shows up, share this story. She needs to hear it. 10 a.m. Christmas morning, the first domino fell. Megan checked her phone for the catering delivery confirmation. Nothing in her inbox. She checked spam. Nothing. She called Rosa's kitchen. Rosa answered. She was home with her own family. The order had been canceled. The kitchen was closed. Mrs. Ashford canceled last night. Megan said, "I'm Mrs. Ashford." Rosa said, "The other Mrs. Ashford, the one who placed the order, the original, the one who'd been paying for Christmas dinner for 12 years, the one whose account it was, whose credit card was on file, whose name was on every confirmation since 2014. Megan hung up. She stood in her magazine perfect dining room with her new linen napkins and her stolen china, and she stared at Brandon. "Your mother canceled the catering." Brandon blinked. "She can't do that." "She just did." "But that's our Christmas dinner. 22 servings. 5. Brandon, you invited 5 people, but you were expecting food for 22 because your mother was going to provide it like she always does. I found out later. Rosa told me what Megan said next on the phone. In a second call 10 minutes later, there must be a mistake. There was no mistake. There was a cancellation. A cancellation is a decision someone makes when they have been uninvited from the thing they were paying for. An event planner should know the difference, but neither Brandon nor Megan did the one thing that might have mattered. Neither of them called me to ask why. The second domino, the gifts. Brandon walked into the living room and looked under the tree. Megan's gifts were there. 4 presents for the kids, 2 for Brandon, 1 for Jared. Neatly wrapped, carefully chosen. Megan is good at this. 7 gifts. But the mountain was missing. The avalanche of silver and red that appeared every Christmas morning like magic. 22 presents chosen over 3 months of observation. Purchased with Teresa's money, wrapped with Teresa's hands, tagged with Teresa's handwriting. That mountain was gone. The kids noticed first. Lily 7 counted the packages and frowned. "Where are the rest? Where's Grandma's presents?" Brandon knelt down. "Grandma's celebrating with us in January." "Sweetheart, she'll bring your presents then." Lily tilted her head. "But Grandma always knows what I want." Megan flinched. I wasn't there to see it, but I know she flinched because Lily was right. I do know what she wants. I've known what every person in that family wanted for 35 years. I tracked it in the binder. Notes from conversations, observations from visits, wish lists assembled through attention and love. Brandon's face didn't match his words. He was starting to count. He was adding things up the way you do when the power goes out and you realize how many things in your house need electricity. The catering gone, the gifts gone. He hadn't checked the cabin yet. He hadn't checked the bank. The morning was young. The dominoes were still falling. Jared arrived at Brandon's house at noon. He drove up from his hotel. He'd flown in from Austin the day before. He walked in with a bottle of wine and a grin. "Merry Christmas. What time are we heading to the cabin?" Brandon looked at him. Megan looked at the floor. What Jared said. Did something happen with the cabin? Brandon called Dave at the property management office. "Christmas Day. Dave picked up because Dave always picks up. Your mother canceled the reservation last night." Handed back the key. Brandon held the phone away from his face. He turned to Jared. "Mom canceled the cabin." Jared stared. "Dude, Mom paid for the cabin 20 years. My younger son had been going to the Evergreen cabin his whole life practically. He'd slept in those beds, eaten at that table, sat by that fireplace every Christmas of his adult life. And he never once asked who wrote the check. He thought it was a family property. He thought it just existed. The way Christmas morning just existed. The way dinner just appeared. The way gifts just materialized. Dave confirmed. The cabin was rebooked through New Year's. No availability, no backup plan. Jared sat down on the couch. I didn't know Mom paid for any of this. Brandon didn't answer. He was doing math now, adding numbers he'd never bothered to ask about. The 4th domino was the big one, the one that hit the foundation. Brandon checked his bank account at 3 p.m. on Christmas Day, a habit. He always checked on December 24th or 25th because the deposit from Teresa always arrived on the 23rd. Clockwork. 5 years running. Nothing pending, nothing deposited. He logged out and logged back in. He refreshed. He checked the account number. Nothing. He called Gerald Christmas Day. Gerald picked up because Gerald is a professional and because he'd been expecting the call. Gerald, I'm looking at my account. The transfer from my mother. Your mother redirected the funds. You'll need to speak with her directly. Redirected where I'm not at liberty to say Brandon client confidentiality. Brandon hung up. His mortgage payment was due January 1st, 7 days away. $25,000 that he'd budgeted for, counted on, built his finances around for 5 years. Gone. He looked at Megan. The Christmas bonus from Mom. How much? $25,000. Megan sat down every year since Dad died. You never told me. Brandon didn't answer that. He couldn't, because telling Megan that his mother had been quietly paying $25,000 a year toward their mortgage would have undermined every argument Megan had made about Teresa being selfish and controlling. So, he kept it secret. He took the money, and he kept the secret. And he let his wife dismantle his mother's place at the table. $25,000 a year. 5 years. $125,000, and Megan called it control. 2:00 p.m. Christmas Day. I was home. Hank had arrived at 10 a.m. as promised. Brown bag under one arm, bottle of Merlot under the other. He brought a rotisserie chicken from the gas station because everything else was closed. It's not prime rib, he said, setting it on the counter, but the bird is warm. And so am I. We ate on paper plates. We watched White Christmas on the TV in the living room. The same movie Frank and I watched every year after the family left and the house got quiet. Bing Crosby and Danny Kaye in Vermont. Hank hummed along. I let him. My phone sat on the kitchen counter silent. No calls, no texts since Brandon's morning emoji. He hadn't called to apologize. He hadn't called to ask why. He hadn't called to check on his 69-year-old mother spending Christmas alone. He was scrambling to replace the food. He was scrambling to replace the cabin. He was scrambling to replace the money. He wasn't scrambling to replace me. Hank glanced at the phone, then at me. They're trying to save Christmas, he said. They're not trying to save you. That tells you who they are, Teresa. I took a sip of wine. I know who they are, Hank. I've known for a while. I just stopped pretending. Hank and I talked until the wine was gone and the chicken was bones. He'd been watching for years. He'd watched Megan edge me out one tradition at a time. He'd watched Brandon fold. He'd watched Jared drift. He'd said nothing because he wasn't sure it was his place. Frank's brother, not Frank. Frank would be furious. Hank said he'd drive to that house and have words. Frank would have been heartbroken. I said that's worse. He'd also be proud of what you did last night. You didn't burn anything down, Teresa. You just stopped building. I brought out the binder. I don't know why. I hadn't planned to, but Hank is the only person alive who understands what it represents. 35 years. He's been to every Christmas. He watched Frank and me build each one. Hank turned to the 2021 tab the year Frank died. He read the last note Frank left tucked inside the front pocket of the December section. You're the reason they all come home. Hank closed the binder. He pressed his hand flat on the cover. He was right, Teresa, and now they'll know it. Then Hank told me something I didn't know. He was in the group chat. Ashford Christmas 2026. Megan had added him. He'd seen the plans unfold over weeks. I fought with Brandon about it. Hank said 2 weeks ago I told him it was wrong. He said Megan thinks it's best. I said Megan thinks wrong. He stopped replying. Hank had tried. He'd fought for me and lost, the only person who did. 5 p.m., Christmas Day. The phone finally rang. Brandon, not a text this time, an actual call. I almost didn't recognize the sound. My son calling me on a telephone using his voice like a human being communicating with his mother. I picked up, Merry Christmas, Brandon. Mom, what's going on? His voice was tight, controlled, the voice he uses in meetings when a project is behind schedule. The caterer said you canceled. The cabin is gone. The gifts! Mom, what happened? I was calm. I'd had all day to be calm. You said it was a small family thing, Brandon. I respected that. But the food, the gift, the cabin, those were my contributions to the family Christmas. Since I'm not part of it this year, neither are they. Silence. 3 seconds. 5. I could hear Megan breathing in the background. Then, "Mom, that's not fair. My son said this to me on Christmas Day. The son who excluded me from Christmas said that my response to being excluded was not fair." I let that sentence sit in the air like smoke. "What's not fair, Brandon?" He couldn't answer because he knew. In the background, I heard Megan whisper, urgent, sharp, "Ask her about the check." Brandon cleared his throat. "Mom, Megan wants to know." I heard her. The answer is, I redirected the funds. The Meadowbrook Community Foundation sends their thanks. Merry Christmas, Brandon. I hung up. I set the phone back on the counter. I turned to Hank. "More wine." "God, yes," he said. Hank called his niece at Brandon's house later that evening. She'd been there all afternoon. She told him everything. Megan was furious. Not sorry. Not reflective, furious. "She's punishing us." That was Megan's first response. "She's being manipulative. This is exactly what I was talking about. And she uses money to control everyone." Brandon was quiet. He was sitting at the kitchen table with the calculator app open on his phone. $4,800 plus $12,000 plus $6,500 plus $25,000. He did the math twice. $48,300. That's how much his mother poured into Christmas every year alone, without help, without thanks. Megan said, "We don't need her money." Brandon said nothing because they did need it. The mortgage payment was due in 7 days. And every year that Brandon accepted that $25,000 check, he knew. He knew his mother was subsidizing the life his wife used as a stage to campaign against her. $25,000 a year, 5 years, $125,000. And Megan called it control. Then Jared spoke. He'd been silent all day, sitting on the couch drinking wine. Being Jared, the man who confused attachment with independence. The man who lived 1,000 miles away and called it neutrality. Jared said, "Did any of us even get Mama a present?" Silence. Total silence. Nobody did. Not Brandon, not Megan, not Jared, not the cousins. Nobody bought Teresa a gift. They hadn't in years. They just assumed I didn't want anything. They assumed the woman who gave everything wanted nothing. $48,300 out, $0 in. And they called me controlling. 6 p.m. I told Hank I was going to the Meadowbrook Community Shelter. He nodded. "Want company? I'd love it." I packed what I had. The cookies I'd baked 3 days ago, originally for the family butter cookies from my grandmother's recipe, 100 dozen in tins wrapped with ribbon. I loaded them into the car with the leftover wine and 2 foil-wrapped plates of chicken. The shelter was warm and bright. Fluorescent lights, long folding tables, paper tablecloths with printed candy canes, volunteers in Santa hats, children running between chairs. I put on an apron and served dinner. Chicken and mashed potatoes, green beans rolls. I poured coffee. I handed out cookies to children who took 2 and asked for 3. I sat down next to a woman named Dolores, 74 years old, silver hair, kind eyes. Her children lived in Oregon. She hadn't seen them in 2 years. We didn't talk about families. We ate cookies. We watched the children play. Dolores patted my hand on the table. "You have kind hands," she said. I stared at her. The last person who said that to me was Frank 12 years ago. He said it while I was rolling pie crust, and I'd laughed because my hands were covered in flour. "Thank you, Dolores. Merry Christmas, dear. Merry Christmas." January 2nd, 9 days after Christmas, Brandon showed up at my door alone. No Megan, no kids, just my son in a wrinkled coat with circles under his eyes, like he'd been sleeping badly for a week. He probably had. I opened the door. Brandon. Mom. He stood on the porch, snow on his shoulders. He looked like he wanted to say something and couldn't find the first word. "Come in," I said. "I'll make coffee." He sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd unplanned Christmas 9 days ago. The house was clean now, tree-down decorations boxed. The binder sat on the table closed. Brandon stared at the binder. He hadn't seen it in years. He probably forgot it existed. He started the way I expected with Megan. "Mom," Megan thought. I held up my hand. "Stop." He stopped. I don't want to hear what Megan thought. I want to hear what you thought. Brandon, you're my son. You're 40 years old. You sent that text, not Megan. You. You. She didn't type the words. She didn't press send. Your fingers, your phone, your decision. His chin trembled. His eyes went red at the rims. My son, my firstborn, sitting in my kitchen with the composure of a boy who broke a window and knows it. I didn't think it would. You didn't think that's the problem. I didn't think you'd be this hurt. I let that hang. I let him hear it. The man who excluded his mother from Christmas didn't think she'd be hurt. Brandon, what did you think I'd feel? Grateful. Relieved. What exactly did you picture me doing on Christmas morning while my entire family gathered without me? He didn't answer. He looked at the binder, then he looked at me. I'm sorry, Mom. I know you are, but sorry isn't the word I need right now. I need the truth. I opened the binder. I turned to the first tab. 1991, the year Brandon was 5. This is your first Christmas. Menu in blue ink, gift list in pencil. A Polaroid of Brandon in his pajamas tearing open a fire truck. Frank in the background still in his bathrobe grinning. I turned the pages year by year. The ink colors changed blue to green to black to the red pen I started using in 2005 because it was easier to read. The lists grew longer. The budgets grew higher. The photos changed from Polaroids to prints to nothing. I stopped including photos when my hands got too busy. I turned to 2021, the year Frank died. This is the year I buried your father and served turkey to 23 people 3 days later. Every box is checked. Nobody helped. Brandon stared at the page. His father's last note was taped to the inside pocket. He read it. His lips moved. You're the reason they all come home. I turned to 2026, this year's tab. Every box checked, every line filled in. Gift list complete. Menu finalized. Cabin confirmed. Bonus scheduled. This is the year you told me I wasn't family. He tried to speak. Nothing came. 35 tabs, Brandon. 35 years of Christmases. And your name is in every single one. Every gift I chose for you. Every meal I planned around what you liked. Every year written in my handwriting because I loved you enough to write it all down. He saw his name repeated across decades in his mother's handwriting, documented in ink. He put his head in his hands. The front door opened at 2:00 p.m. Megan walked in without knocking. She must have tracked Brandon's phone. She does that. She was dressed for battle. Hair pulled back, coat still on, jaw set. She stood in my living room doorway and aimed her opening line at me like a weapon. Teresa, I understand you're upset, but this kind of financial retaliation is exactly Megan. I didn't raise my voice. I've never had to. 32 years of managing a school building teaches you that volume is the first thing you sacrifice when you want to be taken seriously. I canceled my own orders. I returned my own gifts. I redirected my own money. What exactly did I take from you? She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. You the cabin and the dinner? My cabin, my dinner, my money. I didn't take anything from you. I stopped giving. She stood still. I could see the gears working, every corporate gala she'd ever planned. She knew the cost of labor, the cost of logistics, the hours behind a flawless event. She just never applied that math to me. You're an event planner, Megan. You know exactly how much work goes into what I did every year. You knew, and you told my son I was controlling. Megan sat down. Her armor cracked. Not dramatically, a hairline fracture, but enough. Her eyes went wet. My mother used holidays to... I'm not your mother, Megan. I never was. She cried. Not performative tears. Real ones. Quiet. Messy, the kind that come from a place so old you forgot it was there. I didn't comfort her. Not yet. She hadn't earned that yet. My phone rang at 3 p.m. Brandon and Megan were still at the table sitting in the wreckage of what they had done. I looked at the screen. Jared Austin area code. Mom. Jared. I'm sorry. 2 words. His voice was small. Smaller than I'd heard it since he was a boy calling from summer camp homesick and trying not to show it. I should have said something. I was in that group chat and I didn't want to get involved. You were involved the moment you didn't speak up, Jared. Silence is a choice. I know. Do you? Because you've made that choice every year since your father died. You let Brandon and Megan run this family because it was easier for you. You live 1,000 miles away and you think distance is the same as neutrality. It's not. A long pause. Traffic sounds in the background. He was probably driving the way he always processed hard things. Behind the wheel, moving away from whatever hurt. Dad would have been so angry at me. Your father would have been heartbroken, Jared. Anger was never the problem in this family. Indifference was. He was crying. I could hear it. My 36-year-old son who hasn't visited in over a year crying in his car in Austin, Texas, 1,000 miles from the mother he forgot. I'm booking a flight, he said. February, I'm coming to see you. You're welcome anytime, Jared. You always were. I sat back down across from Brandon and Megan. The binder was still open between us, Frank's note visible. 3 decades of love documented in colored ink. I'm not punishing you, I said. I need you both to hear that. This is not revenge. This is not manipulation. I am choosing myself for the first time in 35 years. I am choosing myself. Brandon looked at me. Megan stared at her hands. I will not be organizing Christmas anymore. I will not be funding anyone's mortgage. I will not be the invisible engine that runs this family while being told I'm not part of it. I paused. I let the words settle. If you want a relationship with me, it will be as equals, not as a service provider, not as a backup plan, not as someone you handle. Megan flinched at that word. She remembered typing it. I love you, Brandon. I will always love you, but I will not love you at the cost of myself. Not anymore, Brandon said quietly. Mom, I don't know how to do Christmas without you. Then it's time you learned. I did it for 35 years, Brandon. Alone for the last 5. You can manage 1. I closed the binder. I placed my hands flat on the cover, the way Hank had done the night before. You said it was a small family thing. I looked at my son. You were right. I am the smallest, quietest, most invisible thing in this family, and I just became the loudest silence you've ever heard. Nobody spoke. The kitchen clock ticked. The coffee went cold. I let the silence do the work. January came and went like a cold wind through an open door. Brandon scrambled to cover the mortgage payment. He and Megan sold a piece of furniture, an antique console table Megan had bought at auction, and borrowed the rest from Megan's sister. They made the January 1st deadline by 3 days. The February payment they handled on their own. It was tight. They'd been living with a $25,000 cushion for 5 years and never built a budget without it. Megan and Brandon fought not about me about the money. She was furious he'd kept the bonus secret. He was furious she'd orchestrated the exclusion. They fought about the kind of things couples fight about when the foundation cracks. Who knew what, who said what, who should have said something. Uncle Hank stopped visiting Brandon's house. He told his niece, and his niece told the cousins, and the cousins told their parents. News traveled the way it always does in families. Not through announcements, but through absence. People stopped calling Brandon for Sunday dinners. The Ashford circle contracted. 2 of the cousins who'd been in the group chat called me in mid-January. They apologized. They said they didn't think it was a big deal. They said they assumed I knew. I said it was 35 years of 1 year. Absence is its own announcement. I didn't tell anyone what happened. I didn't post anything. I didn't make a single phone call. I just stopped doing what I'd always done. And the vacuum was louder than anything I could have said. February. I bought a new binder. Not leather this time. Something lighter. Blue canvas, silver clasp, half the weight. I labeled the cover with a sticker maker Lily had given me 2 Christmases ago. Teresa, not Ashford Christmas, not family plans. Just my name. I opened it to the first tab and wrote 3 words I'd never written in 35 years of planning. Things I want. I stared at them. I'd never made a page for myself. Every tab I'd ever created was for other people. Their meals, their gifts, their schedules, their comfort. This page was blank and mine. I filled it in an hour. A trip to Savannah. I've wanted to see the squares since I read Midnight in the Garden 20 years ago. A pottery class at the community center. Weekend volunteering at the Meadowbrook shelter. A reading group at the library. The $25,000 I'd redirected went to the Meadowbrook Community Foundation. In March, they used it to launch an after-school tutoring program at my old school. They named it the Frank Ashford Learning Center. I went to the opening ceremony. I cut the ribbon. I stood in the hallway where I'd been principal for 32 years and watched children sit down at desks paid for with the money my son didn't need as much as they did. I cried for the first time since Christmas. Standing in that hallway, I finally cried. March. A letter arrived. Not a text, not an email, a handwritten letter. 3 pages in an envelope with a stamp and a return address I recognized as Brandon's. My 40-year-old son, who communicates in text messages and emoji hearts, wrote me a letter. His handwriting is terrible. Always has been, even after I spent 2 summers tutoring him in cursive. It's the most beautiful thing I've read since Frank's last note. He wrote about what he'd learned. He wrote about taking the kids to the store to buy their own presents for the first time, how long it took. How hard it was to choose for 20 people when you've never done it before. He wrote about trying to cook Christmas dinner at his house on New Year's. The ham was overdone. The potatoes were lumpy. The kids ate cereal. He wrote, "I didn't know how much you carried, Mom. I should have. I'm sorry I let someone else decide what our relationship was." He didn't mention Megan. He didn't make excuses. He just apologized, like a man like his father would have. The last line. I found one of Dad's notes in an old box. It said, "Take care of your mother. She takes care of everything else." I failed at that, Mom. I won't fail again. I read the letter twice. I put it in the new binder, first item under things I have, December 1 year later. I am not hosting Christmas. I'm attending one. Brandon organized it himself. It took him 3 months of planning. I know, because Lily told me proudly that her dad had been doing binder stuff. He didn't call it a binder. He called it a spreadsheet. Close enough. The dinner is at Brandon's house. The food is takeout from Rose's kitchen. Brandon called her in October and ordered for 12. He paid with his own credit card. The ham he attempted himself. Megan helped. It's slightly burned on the outside. It's perfect. The gifts are modest personal. Lily made me a card with glitter glue and crooked letters. She's 8 now, practically a teenager in her own mind, but she remembered. Mom, you're the best grandma. I'm keeping it forever. Brandon pulls out the chair at the head of the table. Sit here, Mom. This is your seat. I sit. I don't cook. I don't serve. I don't clean. I am a guest at a table my son built. It's smaller. It's imperfect. It's his. Megan quietly hands me a gift. She wrapped herself. A framed photograph. Teresa and Frank at the Evergreen Cabin 15 years ago, the same photo I'd kept. I found the original. Megan says, "I thought you should have it." I hold the frame. Frank is laughing. I'm standing beside him looking at him, not the camera. I always looked at him. Merry Christmas, Megan. Merry Christmas, Teresa. I set the photo on the table beside my plate. The ham is overcooked. The gifts are small. The table seats 12, not 22. There is no cabin. There is no binder. There is no $48,000 production. But my son pulled out my chair and my name is on the place card. And for the first time in 35 years, I am sitting at a Christmas I didn't have to build. For 35 years. I gave them Christmas. This year, they gave it to me. And if you're the Teresa in your family, the one who plans, who cooks, who wraps, who pays, who remembers, who shows up even when you're breaking, hear me, your labor is not invisible. It was never invisible. They just weren't looking. But the moment you stop, they'll see it. They'll see you. And if they don't, then you'll see yourself, and that's enough. Subscribe and I'll see you next time.